Architectural Board of Review for November 14th. We could have a roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I'll go ahead and take a roll call. Chair Moore?
Here.
Vice Chair Six?
Here.
Board Member Anderson?
Here.
Board Member Black?
Here.
Board Member Noon?
Here.
Board Member Olson?
Here.
And Board Member Whalen?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to public comment. General public comment. Do we have anybody who wishes to speak?
Thank you, Chair Moore. I'll start with virtual. If anyone attending virtually would like to speak on general business, please raise your hand and I'll call on you. Not seeing any raised hands. We did not have any speaker slips and we did not receive any written correspondence for general business. Back to you, Chair Moore.
Great. So we can move on to approval of the minutes for October 31st, please. If we could have those up. Okay. Does anyone have any comments, edits, etc.?
Move we accept as presented.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Black. Any discussion? No? We can vote, please.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I'll take the roll call vote. Chair Moore?
Yes.
Vice Chair Six?
Yes.
Board Member Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member Black?
Yes.
Board Member Noon?
Yes.
Board Member Wilson?
Yes.
Board Member Whalen?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, and November 7th.
Thank you, Chair Moore. We had on the November 7th Architecture Board of Review consent agenda, we had item A, 820 Bond Avenue. This received project design approval and final approval with some following conditions. Item B, 801 Shoreline Drive, was only there for concept review and no decision was made, but it was continued indefinitely with a fair amount of comments as well for the applicant to work on. And this was the November 7th meeting for consent.
Okay. Does,
I move we accept the comment, or the minutes.
okay. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Any discussion? No? Let's vote.
Thank you. I'll take the roll call vote. Chair Moore?
Yes.
Vice Chair Six?
Yes.
Board Member Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member Black?
Yes.
Board Member Noon?
Yes.
Board Member Olson?
Yes.
Board Member Whalen?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, and the 14th.
Thank you, Chair Moore. On today's consent agenda, we had one item, 1413 Gillespie Street. This received project design approval and final approval with comments. And that was the only item on today's agenda. Thank you.
All right. Do we have?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? No? Okay, let's vote.
Thank you. I'll take the roll call vote. Chair Moore?
Yes.
Vice Chair Six?
Yes.
Board Member Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member Black?
Yes.
Board Member Noon?
Yes.
Board Member Olson?
Yes.
And Board Member Whalen?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, and November 2nd. Okay. This was our special joint meeting.
I move we accept the minutes.
Okay, I will second that. Any discussion, edits? No? Let's vote.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I'll take the roll call vote. Chair Moore?
Yes.
Vice Chair Six?
Yes.
Board Member Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member Black?
Yes.
Board Member Noon?
Yes.
Board Member Olson?
Abstain, I was absent.
And Board Member Whalen?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, then that, we have item E on here, the 14th.
Yes. So we need to also approve today's joint consent hearing for,
Ah,
Yeah.
got it.
and those are up on the screen as well.
Okay. Who represented the ABR today?
Myself.
Okay,
Great. And it looks good.
okay. So you'll make a motion to?
Yes.
Second.
Great. Let's vote.
Thank you. I'll take the roll call vote. Chair Moore?
Yes.
Vice Chair Six?
Yes.
Board Member Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member Black?
Yes.
Board Member Noon?
Yes.
Board Member Olson?
Yes.
And Board Member Whalen?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Great. Any announcements, requests by applicants, future agenda items and appeals? Nothing at this time? Okay. Any subcommittee reports? No? No? Okay, well,
Well, Chair Moore, I
Yes.
guess I should give a mention. Perhaps it's not the appropriate place on the agenda, but I was identified as a member for the Santa Barbara Airport Long Range Plan Committee. They had a meeting of the collected representatives of various boards, if this is the appropriate time. They really sketched out a preliminary schematic site plan for future additions and their schedule. There was some discussion about that site plan, but I will have more at a subsequent meeting when they update that plan, which I think will be in January. I'm not sure.
okay, great.
Chair Moore, I do have, I'm on the work team for the objective design standards, and that document has been out, and the opportunity to review it, I've been reviewing it in depth, but anybody who would like to review that, the time is running out. I think it's something like December, mid-December, that 18th, I think it is, that the deadline for public comment on that draft is due.
Yeah, I took a first brief read through, and yeah, I'd encourage everybody here and in the public sphere to take a look at that and provide comments.
It is a very important form-shaping document for the future of this community.
And Mr. Chair, if I may add to that, that it's really helpful to have the board's comments alongside all the members of the public, because as you were told, that staff will be coming back in January to both ABR and HLC, but to get that input sooner rather than later. And I think just a correction on the date, I think it's December 16th is the final
Sorry.
day. Yeah, no worries.
Okay. So with that, we can move on from general business to item 1, which is 402 South Hope. Come on up. So this is a continued item here for project design approval and final approval. And this is the proposal for a 1,708 square foot service maintenance building, a 2,354 square foot expansion and addition to the Mercedes-Benz Porsche building, a 467 square foot expansion to the BMW Audi building, and construction of a 1,532 square foot service portico for the Porsche building. All right. Project requires project compatibility findings and consistency with the Upper State Street Area Design Guidelines and the Planning Commission resolution. It was last year, February 22nd. Is there anything we need to know about the Planning Commission resolution?
I have the planning commission resolution. I wasn't aware of anything from the case planner, but we can take a look at it, and we can also review the minutes from the
Yes, please.
last hearing.
Okay. So overall, the board is happy with the direction. Match exterior detailing with the existing car dealership. Provide a landscape plan. For BMW, the design is acceptable as proposed. Provide additional detailing. Study the Porsche service portico to reduce the extent of the span. The new Porsche addition area seems acceptable. Provide exterior detailing. Okay, and then project is ready for project design approval. Okay. And then anything on that planning commission?
I
resolution?
suggest, I want to read through it to double check, so I would urge us just to go through the applicant's presentation, and at that point, I can step in if there are anything that the ABR should be aware of.
Okay, great. Welcome back. If you could state your name
My
and,
name is Mike Ramsey with Lasardi Construction, representing the Santa Barbara Auto Group. And from, So from the last meeting that I remember was on the online meeting, the big factor was to make the electric vehicle building have the details match more consistent with the rest of the building columns. And if you can take it, are you in control of this or am I?
No, this is
All me? All right. I don't know if we can zoom in on, you can see it, the detailing now matches. It's recessed in this area here. These come up.
So
and
if you
has
want
the
to zoom in, you can, there's that little magnifying glass deal up there.
Will, can you hook us up?
There we go.
Will has the magic touch. See? I can't even see that. Thank you, Will. Yep. Cool.
So what we did is, so this now matches out in the front, all the columns that are there with the same size 8-inch recess detail and columns similar, and it just steps back. It's all stucco and white, like the rest of the building. Let's see, yeah, that's the biggest three-dimensional one that's.
Okay, and then there was some of the other details that we requested to match.
Oh, the front, yeah, let me go to that. A better view of the model, but we got rid of the open canopy that was here, pulled it all back and tied it back in with the existing column that's right there, so that it all is all consistent with the rest of the building and all the details all match in the front.
Okay.
I believe those were that was the biggest items
Can
here.
you put the motion back up from last time? Thanks. So number 2, you showed us that's the electrical
Yeah,
vehicle
the
maintenance. You showed
detailing
us
of that.
So provide a landscaping plan for the area.
They do have that. There's the areas of landscape. They have small planter areas, green areas here. Redid this planter area here and the planter areas out in front of the building and some right out in here in this retention area. And the landscape, all the exterior landscape around the entire site had pretty much been redone a couple of years prior, I think maybe 3 years ago. It was all redone.
Okay. And then the other comments were relating to the mullions and glazing system.
Yeah, and those are all, go back to that. They all are to match the existing, because that was the comment from Porsche that they wanted to go to all buck glaze system, and because the ones across the street all match, and we had Jaguar Land Rover, they had to match the existing mullion system, so this entire thing matches, and I'll show you that in the
Okay.
elevations. Let's see this one. It's all, there's existing, and it's all the same exterior storefront system to be removed, but it's all to be match existing. So it all looks the same.
Okay. I think that was everything in the motion, I believe,
Go back.
Yeah.
Motion one more time.
if we could. Service portico reduces sign of spam, we talked about that. Typical mullion door systems. Okay. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
And I could have sworn that there was we had a meeting after February, I mean, we've been a lot on this project.
Yeah,
So.
been a lot of different
I
parts,
could,
yeah.
I think we've hit on everything that is required, so.
Okay.
And then Chair Moore to the ABR staff as well, or board members. Here on screen are the conditions from the Planning Commission resolution. So these four.
Okay. Screen backflow.
I'll zoom in and scroll down too. So
Is there, have you revisited your trash enclosure?
The trash enclosure, we met with, Marburg takes care of the whole thing. They're okay with what we have. I met with the people, the group that oversees the trash for the recycling. And because they have a program with Marburg and they handle the thing, it's okay to not change what the system that they have now. That's why it's exactly the same way that it's shown.
Okay. So no
And-
changes to the
No,
trash
and the
enclosure?
bicycle parking, I know that came up in the planning commission. We show adding some. They were talking about possibly adding a total of 34 bicycle parking spaces there for people to come, for workers and for the public. And we don't have a problem adding that, and we were gonna work with Tony and the, Michelle Bedard, on that. So I think, that's not and they're all the same standard loop looking.
Okay.
bicycle racks.
While we have this up, you may not have a location yet for your irrigation backflow device, but,
I think it's gonna be in the existing place that it is now.
okay.
I mean, they're not gonna change, I don't think they're gonna change. There's not a significant amount of landscape.
Okay. Well, let's open public comment. Is there anyone that would like to speak?
Thank you, Chair Moore. If anyone joining via Zoom would like to speak on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand, and I will call on you. Not seeing any raised hands. I don't have any speaker slips, and we did not receive any written correspondence for this item. Back to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, let's go with questions. Mr. Whalen, do you want to start?
No questions, Chair Moore.
Mr. Olson?
No questions.
Ms. Noon?
and
Mr.
None
White?
for me either.
Vice Chair Six?
Being final design, is there going to be any,
Preliminary
no, it
and
says.
final.
And final, yes, okay, and final. Is there any change or additional lighting proposed for this project? And where so is that identified?
No exterior light poles or anything that's added. There's underneath the portico, there's gonna be, some lighting, general lighting, but not exposed lighting to the outside, no new light poles.
So what you're saying is that the porch canopy is the new addition and therefore it will have new lighting and.
Underneath it,
And
yes.
nothing else throughout
Nothing
the
else.
project will have additional lighting?
No.
And those lighting, that lighting will be recessed cans?
Yes, up in the deck. It's actually a linear, I believe it's a linear design. That's by Porsche. You don't see the lights. It comes through slits in the ceiling.
But it's recessed in the
Yes.
in
Up
the
in
plane
up
of
in
the
the
ceiling?
ceiling, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Ms. Anderson?
Just one question. Do you have a thought on where all the bicycle parking will go?
There is some for employees in a special room up on the parking deck. There is already current parking spaces that they were adding to that's between the Audi and BMW. It's near the service drive. It's right by where
Can
you
you
go walk.
show that on the site?
Oh,
plan?
sure can. It is, in fact, I think I have it. It's here. This area right here is used, they use it for lockable, employees can put their bikes in here. It's a storage, it's where bike parking is, and the other area is, let me go back to that. It's right here. There's some right in this area. Let me zoom in even further.
Do you feel like you're gonna have to remove or rearrange any part of the building to accommodate for the additional bicycle parking?
No, because we can spread it through, if we really have to go to the 34 spaces, we'll have to, like we did Jaguar right out in the very front, they have 2 or 3 loops.
Okay.
And they just put them in an area where it's accessible, and we've got accessible ramps on Hitchcock and on Hope.
Okay. And then do you have an actual detail of the storefront system, like a head sill and jam detail that you can briefly show us?
No, I don't. We don't have it's, the area that we're replacing is adjacent to other Mercedes. Everything that we've replaced out there all looks exactly the same color
sure,
and finish.
I understand that. It's just nice to see an actual detail. Those are my questions.
Okay, any comments?
No comments, Chair Moore.
No comments.
None.
None from me either.
Vice Chair Six?
I think it's ready for design approval and final.
Okay, Ms. Anderson?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, would someone like to make that motion?
Mr. Chair? I would make a motion for preliminary design approval and final design approval with the staff to review after final the location of the bicycle parking areas to including the additional ones required to see if there are not and there's a significant change to the landscape areas, and to provide the detail of the existing window mullions and storefront system. Also for staff to review.
Can you make the compatibility findings?
Oh, yes.
Please.
So this project can be found to be compatible as, number one, it is consistent with the design of the guidelines in the location of the project. Number two, it is compatible with the architecture character of the city and neighborhood in which it resides. Number three, there is no significant change to the size, mass, bulk, and height and scale of the project. Number 4, there are no adjacent landmarks or historic resources nearby to be affected. Number 5, there are no public views of the ocean or mountains affected. And 6, the use of open space and landscaping is negligent and provided.
Second.
Any discussion? No? Okay, let's take a vote.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I'll take the roll call vote. Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six.
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Good to see you guys all.
And I also just wanted to announce the appeal process as well. That is up on the board. You may either submit in writing or email to the clerk, and you have 10 days to do so, 10 calendar days.
Great. And it appears we are ahead of schedule slightly, so I believe we can take a 5-minute recess.
It's more than that, unfortunately. It looks like, so our next item is scheduled for 3:50. The earliest we could start is 3:35, and so we're 10 minutes out. I did have the planner email the applicant to let them know that we were moving a little quicker than expected.
Okay. Well, then let's recess until 3:35.
And
Thank
hope
you.
that they're here.
We've moved on to item number 2. And this is 425 Garden Street. This is a continued item here for project design approval. The project consists of demolition of all on-site structures and construction of a 4-story, 36-unit residential complex with common rooftop amenities. The project proposes 2 moderate-income rental units, 4 very low-income rental units, and 30 market-rate rental units. No parking is proposed on site, consistent with the AUD ordinance. The project is proposed at a density of 94.74 units per acre, which is allowable with state density bonus law. Project requires compliance with the project compatibility analysis guidelines and was last year, August 22nd. Welcome back.
Thank you.
If we could have our
Chair Moore and to the rest of the board, staff has some comments. This project was noticed incorrectly. Apologies to the applicant and to those who are in attendance. The project cannot receive project design approval today due to a noticing error on our behalf. So it's kind of a continued concept review, more or less. So no decisions will be made today. But we can pull up the minutes as well, but I just wanted to make that clear.
Okay, yes, if we could have our minutes, please.
Chair Moore, I have a question for staff. Did this go to Planning Commission already?
I don't.
Yeah, if I can jump in. So Megan Arciniega is the case planner. She should be down here momentarily. She did write a memo, and this did go to the Planning Commission. So as soon as she's here, she can answer. She will be available to answer any questions regarding the project.
Great. In the meantime, let's all take a look at the minutes, our motion from last time. So we appreciate the design changes. Feels that the reorientation of the courtyard and its opening to the street is appropriate. Appreciate the breakdown of the massing, concerns of the scale of the project relative to site coverage. Study the street facade and find ways to step the building back from the street. Restudy the design of the proposed balconies to make them appear lighter and less massive. Study the window size, layouts, locations, and make them less repetitive. Provide additional architectural elements and textures to bring variation and interest to the elevation. Then restudy the entrance to the bike room. And further reduce the apparent massing of the bridge portions. And then study ways to increase livability of the west elevation. Okay. I guess we can have them start, and then when the planner arrives, we can get an update from her.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, if you could introduce yourselves and
Yep.
walk us through your changes.
I'm Greg Reitz, I'm the project applicant.
Hi, Sean Day. I work as a planner with Micro Boutique Living, and they're an investor in the project. And I also have my own company, Sean Day Consulting, with a focus on medium density, urban, walkable development.
This is a quick review with a little bit more context than we gave before, but really this building is designed to be livable without a car. So it's a great place to live with a bike. And one of the comments we got from Planning Commission is about this, and we'll address their concern in our presentation. But this is just showing the network of existing and future bike lanes in the vicinity of the project. So you can go in any direction from the project very easily on a bike. Do you want to talk about Paris?
Well, anytime. I'm always anytime. This slide's in here because I think probably many of you are aware that in Europe over the last few decades, I expect that many of you are aware that over the last several decades, places like Amsterdam, Copenhagen, Utrecht, and now Paris have all moved from being very car-centric to focus on active transportation, particularly cycling. And you know, they've been investing heavily in achieving that, and they're doing a great job. And I've lived in Paris quite a while ago, and it was car crazy. So it's been amazing to see what they've done.
Apologies for the interruption. So I would love to discuss cycling and Paris and all of those things. Our scope of review is the aesthetics of the structure. So we make comments regarding the exterior of the building, how it's represented, suggestions. So if we could keep your presentation within that scope, that's our scope of review. We don't have any authority over parking, bike spaces, all of that. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that too. All good stuff, though.
It is.
Actually, could you just back up for 1 second?
Sure.
I think this is important. Obviously, we have a great walk score on the site. And, sorry. We have a great walk score on the site, just like the cycling score is great. And you can see that's on State Street, I believe. We have in Santa Barbara some really fantastic walking areas. And now if you can jump to the next slide. Right now on Garden Street, this is our site on the right. We're not there at this point. And so we're trying to transition from what we have here to the kind of street that you do want to walk to and you'd be happy living in without a car. So sorry, I know that's talking about cars, but it's also about design.
Context photos you've seen before in previous presentations, showing different angles of the site. That's adjacencies
Across the street.
across the street. First iteration, which was, got a lot of comments. We addressed those comments, ended up with this, which was what you saw in August.
Right, and during that presentation, I wasn't available to be here. I was traveling at the time. But this was an attempt to respond to the board's requests about breaking the building up, turning the courtyard around. By doing so, that helped us kind of relate to the street more. We created the bridge in this particular one, which was an element which was meant to unite two, well, on the surface at least, were meant to appear as two different buildings. The board wasn't entirely excited about that approach, as I understand it. We had the upper deck of the bridge was an area for a group amenity that had really lovely views of the mountains. But we also had balconies in the corners, and we went straight up from the street for a good portion of the facade. And so that drew criticism that we needed to look at the apparent bulk and also the effect of the balconies. So jumping right into it.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, getting into, these are the comments that we reviewed at the beginning. So we'll start talking about how we've responded to each of those comments. But, you know, there's a few of the comments that drove pretty big changes to the design, and we, as before, have tried to address all of them. Go ahead.
So the biggest one, and you've seen the drawing changes in the package that you received, the bridge has basically been eliminated, and instead we have a new portico entering into a much reduced opening through into the courtyard space, which is now more of a courtyard than it was before. To the left of the portico, you can see two large windows that look into a new expanded bike room. And those are actually, you can see right through into the courtyard through that space. And the intent there is to not only expand the ability to park more bikes, but create an opportunity for people to service bikes and kind of celebrate the bike culture, which is a big part of what the building is about.
And I would add that this change was driven by two of the comments. One from Planning Commission, which was, hey, if you're trying to build a building that lives without cars, we need more bikes. And the other was the comments that we received both from Planning Commission and from this board about the noise, concerns about the noise in the courtyard. So those two things kind of were solved at one time. The one thing that the board liked a lot about the previous design was the visibility into the courtyard. So we've tried to preserve that both with the new opening as well as having glass on both sides of the bike parking so you can see in through into the courtyard. So you still have that connectivity, but we reduced the sound issue and addressed the bike comment.
I think also on the issue of sound, within that portico, there could be a coffered ceiling with some sound absorbing panels. I think that the intent of using a glass door there would be to, although there's still obviously going to be sound penetrating that, it's not entirely closed off, but it doesn't have the effect of having all bars like you do in many instances in the city, but it could also reflect some sound. Inside the courtyard, I think it would be really important the kind of landscaping we have on the walls, which will help deal with some of the echoey aspects of the courtyard. So this is a very different building than the last one. We're not attempting at this point to suggest there's two different buildings anymore. It is connected, but in a different way. It's not a bridge anymore. We have where there used to be bridge elements, there's now two kind of mini logias, which are private spaces. And then on top of that, one of our amenity spaces, which is much smaller than the one that used to be on the bridge. However, that's been expanded, as you can see in the left corner. And overall, we've taken a look at some of the comments from the board about fenestration and still making sure that we have enough surface excitement on the facade of the building, particularly for those walking along the street. You would never actually see this view because the street trees along the street basically preclude that. And even walking along the sidewalk on the other side, you're only ever going to get glimpses of the building.
You want to talk about this?
Did we jump one or? No, okay, you can go back. One aspect that drives some of the size or the apparent mass on the outside is the fact that we have taken inside a lot of the outdoors in the courtyard space. So that does tend to, or necessarily expand the exterior aspect of the building, but it does create a nice private space and lets more light get into the units than you would be able to achieve if you didn't have this kind of thinness of building wrapping around the site. There's some big changes here. We've pulled back away from the little cottage and introduced an element to connect or establish a relationship between the cottage next door and the structure. We've also introduced an outside way to get into one of the amenity spaces for in the event of any kind of public events or anything that people in the building want to hold.
And talk about the balcony and the step back of the
Sure.
balcony and what was there before.
Yeah, in the past we had balconies running all down the side of the building, pushing out into this space. And I think that there was a notion on the part of the board that the nature of the balconies weren't really complementary to the architecture of the building or to the area. So those have been peeled back at the front. And we've also, as you can see, stepped back at the top giving some breathing room to that cottage. On this side, we've done a similar thing. We've put the bulk of the outdoor amenity space in this top corner. It would have great views of the mountains and possibly the bay. And it gives, from the street level, it would give a stepping back. You would mostly be aware of 3 stories at this point. We've also brought in the outside balconies that were in this area and again incorporated them in small loggias.
And so that was those, I want to emphasize that those were exterior balconies and it was seen as contributing to the mass, so those have been deleted.
So,
Oh, that's the next slide.
yeah.
I skipped ahead.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Well, we've talked a little bit about this. We're trying to provide balconies, for the most part, that are going to have outdoor living space that are more than just Juliet balconies. Juliet balconies don't allow you to really sit outside. They can just give you the opportunity to sort of see outside or stand there and perhaps have a glass of wine, I'm not sure. The balconies themselves that we've retained that are larger, if you have less than 5 feet, you really can't get even a bistro table out on those balconies. And so we've tried to retain that amount of projection, but finding a way to support them is a challenge. So we've been looking at some engineering solutions for that, and the goal will always be to keep them as light as possible in terms of their effect. Where they are positioned further down the side of the building, however, they're going to be far less notable.
Sorry.
That's a quick jump. So
Anticipating the next
another request of the board was that we look at the window size, layouts, and locations to make them less repetitive. This is a gorgeous building. It's, I think, one of my favorites that I've run across in Santa Barbara. But as you can see, it doesn't seem as though having repetitive window arrangements are that uncommon in Santa Barbara, nor are they, going to result in a poor project. And so, you can go to the next one now. While there could still be some tweaking on this, we've tried to create massings or groupings of fenestration that relate to one another within an asymmetrical whole. And at the end of the day, we're building a place where people will have modern expectations about the amount of light and views that they get in their units, which is very different from how the original Santa Barbara style would have evolved, I think, in terms of what the objectives were with that design style. That is, how many centuries old would that now be? It's-
many.
So with the addition of the portico, having moved the elevator toward the front and introducing a lobby off the elevator that can be just 1 story, the various moves with respect to fenestration, showcasing the bike area and emphasizing different opportunities with the amenity space, the introduction of the entry arch down the north side, which also ties to, relates to the cottage. These taken together, plus the landscaping, which is substantial, I think is going to create a really interesting path along the street for pedestrians. So we already spoke about this. You can see a fellow in there working on a bike. You can see through into the courtyard, and so obviously from the courtyard you'll actually get a glimpse through out to the street past the bikes.
We covered that.
I think so, yeah. This is late in the game, this comment, it just is the order that they came. So we were to reduce the massing of the bridge. That was showing as a standing seam verdigris copper, which I'm not sure the rendering does justice to. And so we have, I believe, addressed that in terms of the relationship between the different sections of the building and kind of a fine detail around the entrance. This was a challenging one. We knew it. The location of the elevator, by moving that gave us an opportunity to.
Anticipating what you're about to say.
Okay. Well, we had a very flat line along the back in the past, and we didn't really have enough room to do much about that until we moved the elevator. And so what we've been able to do by doing that is pull in the main living spaces and give some more space for that outside seating area. And by creating an outside structure, it gives people the chance to create a nice outdoor room and actually to make it their own. They could, if they wanted to, they could plant vines, they could have string lights up, and I think it could be actually quite a lovely space. it will always be in the shadow of the Office Max. There's just no question about that. But I think that the focus on the near view, which will be of your own creation, will actually prove to be an okay place to spend time. So in the end, I hope that we have addressed the board's, or the board can see that we've paid attention to their requests and their concerns about the project. I believe that this project is one that will help as the city tries to move in the direction of having more people living downtown through the AUD program. These units are compact, they're efficient, they're going to be as sustainable, I think, as we can have our footprint be in the Western world in terms of how we get around and how we live. And I think that they're going to be, this building in this location is going to be the start of what over the course of the next many years will be a real renewal in this area in terms of creating great housing opportunities that also support the local area in terms of people being in a place where they can walk to work, walk to shop, walk to restaurants. And it does it in a way, it's infill housing of a reasonable amount of density, so it's a positive for the city as well in terms of, you know, generating tax revenue without incurring a lot of costs. So there's many wins in this project.
Thank you, Sean.
Okay, thank you. We have our planner who, would you like to add anything at this point?
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. So I'm Megan Arsenault, I'm the project planner. I just want to let your board know that the project went to the Planning Commission for conceptual review. That's a requirement of projects of the average unit density incentive program of a certain size. So the Planning Commission made conceptual comments on the design and then also consistency with general plan. Those comments are forwarded to you by way of the memo that was provided to you. But I did also want to point out that some of the comments that Planning Commission made in regards to the parking pockets and loading and public improvements were elements that were worked out in detail with city staff, so city transportation, engineering, and public works and creeks. So those were the work of many. So the memo also addressed that the comments in that regard. As Jared stated, the ABR is not really reviewing the public improvements, but I just wanted to let you know that those items had been addressed since the project is looking to move forward to project design approval, and I wanted you to have that comfort. So, and as I believe staff mentioned earlier, there was a noticing error. So although the project is scheduled for project design approval today, your board cannot take action on that today. We will renotice, and the project's already rescheduled for December 12th, and the applicant is aware of that as well. If you have any questions regarding Planning Commission review or the permit process, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're gonna move on to questions from the board.
Chair Moore, we need to open up public comment.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Let's open up public comment.
Thank you, Chair Moore. Starting with virtual public comment. If there's anyone participating via Zoom that would like to speak on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand and I'll call on you. Not seeing any raised hands. I don't have any speaker slips. We did receive written correspondence from Barry Winnick, which was sent to the board prior to this meeting. Back to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, then we can close public comment. I just want to make sure that members of the public are not here to speak regarding this meeting. Okay. Okay, we'll close public comment and go to questions. Ms. Anderson, would you like to start?
You mentioned vertical landscape in the courtyard. Did I hear that correctly?
It's something that we would want to explore, going
got
up
it.
the walls.
Okay. I don't know. I think you'll have to come back to me, Chair Moore.
That's fine. Vice Chair Six.
Yes, Chair Moore. I know that this is not in our purview, but I sat at the intersection of Paris intersection right before work time, and there was probably 20 motorcycles gathered at the light each time it turned red. No motorcycles allowed Is that the program? Any thought about motorcycles?
Do you mean parking of motorcycles?
Yeah.
Right. You know, I think that the big change that's happening is the move to e-bikes.
Okay.
I haven't seen as many e-bikes anywhere I've been recently, in North America at least, as you have here in Santa Barbara. It's amazing.
So the bike parking doesn't accommodate?
Oh, it does.
The motorcycles?
Nothing with a motor except for an electric motor, yeah.
Right.
And then a lot of the planning commission discussion was on the flow of, and I don't quite understand what the flow of the bicycles in and out of the space was. Is it worth going through that
I think it was
quickly?
principally that if you turn to the left, you can walk your bike up to East Haley, and then you're on a bike trail going that direction, and you can just jump out and ride down.
It's just, it wasn't within the project that what they had a problem with.
Yeah, so here, okay, so bike network, you can go,
I
to
don't-
go northeast or west, you either go to Haley or Coda, so you go that, in that direction. If you,
I don't need to be outside the building. I
So-
understand it was
so-
inside the building, no?
Yeah, no, I think, yes. Let me bring up the plan here. Okay, so what we've done in addressing that notion, I don't know that it ended up being an actual comment, but we don't want people to mount on their bikes going towards Haley. So the building remains where it is closer to the sidewalk there. On the other side, we pulled it back from the sidewalk, so we have an opportunity for them to mount bikes in front of the building, but not on the sidewalk. You can see how it's notched in there to the right of the door, plan east.
Yes.
So they can mount there and quickly cross the sidewalk and enter the flow of traffic on the street if they choose.
Okay.
As far as getting bikes out of the room and out onto the sidewalk, we would explore the automatic doors like you have just out here, where you push the button, and so we're gonna open, so you don't have to, you know,
Okay, so it
deal
doesn't
with
sound
that.
architecturally significant. I like the idea of the see-through bike extension in front of the courtyard. Did you consider not having glass on the inside envelope of that between bike storage and courtyard to lighten up that, have it more transparent with some kind of low wall or something?
Oh, no
Without
glazing
glass.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's an interesting idea. It kind of occurred to me, but we never really talked about it. I don't know if you'd have any objection to it, but I don't think I think it's worth exploring.
Okay, worth exploring. All right, thanks. One of the concerns was the width of the sidewalk. And you've kind of mentioned, you know, the concern of people mounting their bikes on this. It occurs to me, what is happening in room number 100 is, could that room, and I realize there's building, you know, critically above it, but could that room only be pushed back in some kind of arcade or corbelled situations such as the front of your bicycle parking be occurring to give, and in the same place, reduce the planting, continuous planting along that wall in order to increase the width of the sidewalk in that area?
I believe we discussed it briefly, the idea of making that like a colonnade there. And the concern was to do that effectively, it would have to be pulled back dramatically, and so we would really lose the functionality of that room.
Yeah, there's,
Or we'd have to push it out further and then pull it back, in which case it wouldn't match with the facade of the building, and we didn't feel like the facade wanted to be any closer on the upper floors. So,
well, there could be some columns with some, the actual glass line actually being back indented as it is in the bicycle parking area? See what I'm talking about?
Oh,
Is that principally just to give some more breathing space along the
Yes.
sidewalk? Is that
Yeah,
what you're thinking about? I think that could be done, and the planting could pull back with it. And so there could be, I presume that what we would have is a concrete sidewalk, but then perhaps on the property, there could be more like a cobbled or brick sidewalk section, so it would give some more
Yeah,
space.
so I guess the question is that there's no definitive use inside room 100 that would prevent you from exploring that, correct?
No, there's not at this point. It's unprogrammed space right now.
That's my question.
Yeah, and
Okay.
so it would, I mean, to the extent that you pull it back, it may limit the kinds of things you can do in the
Absolutely, yeah,
space.
I understand.
But at the same time, I understand what you're seeking to
Mm-hmm.
see happen there, so we can certainly take a look at that.
In that same vein, and especially mentioning the mounting of bikes and so forth, was there any discussion or with Public Works or staff and to actually jog the sidewalk between, the large planting area between the pullouts? In order to jog that back toward kissing the building more and increasing the landscape, slightly increasing the landscape, but more, and at the same time widening that narrow sidewalk. Yes, I guess it's a yes or no. Oh,
No, we
I guess,
didn't- yeah,
I
we
guess
didn't
it's,
explore
could that be explored?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. The last issue or question is, can we bring up the second or third floor? I think second would be more.
Plan?
Floor plan, yeah.
There in the back.
There at the very end, yeah. There you go.
There you go.
Okay, so unit 210 and 310, the covered balconies are outside the bedroom and kind of dogleg to the main living area. Could you do a significant, I don't want to say Juliet, but some kind of significant balcony out front, centered in the living space, and delete that covered, I'm just, it's a pointed question because I think the mass created by that covered balcony outside the bedroom there, it would be wonderful if we could eliminate that on the front elevation. And could you consider, because the front wall of 210, 310 is set back a little bit, that you could have a significant balcony out the dead center of and toward the street in that unit?
Can we
those
look at
units?
the elevation while we're talking about
Yeah.
that?
I'm going back in this direction, or the elevations are actually down here, yeah?
Okay, see the second, the gray, the gray portion, the elevator is obvious, but the secondary one to the left with the three arches,
Yeah.
that's the enclosed balcony. And boy, sure be nice if that could be reduced so you have a wide setback all the way back to the elevator tower wall, and you could extend that red roof over, et cetera, et cetera. So it sure would be nice if it if you could, it's a question. It's a question. Did you explore that?
Question mark.
Did you explore that?
I don't believe we did.
And is it a possibility?
I think the intent was to show that from a pedestrian perspective, that there would be a transparency, so you'd see into the building, so it would be, less massive, apparently, through the archways, and then above, you would see sky. So that was the intent of trying to reduce the mass, where it really doesn't show in the elevations. Maybe you have more to add,
Okay,
Sean.
I think I've framed my comment
Yeah.
quite
Well, and
adequately
yeah.
later.
And it's something we can talk about.
Sorry, okay, thanks.
So, I just had to sketch that. I see where you're going with that, and the obvious impact of that is that, you know, people choosing to live in those units would be losing some really nice outdoor space. And it would also impact our upper level amenity outdoor space. Because you wouldn't want, I don't think, that hanging out to the same extent that it does now, where it's supported by wall, and retain that. And so that would be, I don't know if it would,
That would be the trade-off.
yeah, and it may push us under the amount that we have to provide, or I think we're okay. We've got quite a lot, actually. So that's something we'd have to think about. and,
Okay,
yeah.
I will, you see where I'm going, and perhaps it shouldn't be as specific question, and I'll bring it up more generally and looser in my comments. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Black? Questions?
Can you just show me the landscape plan again, please?
Sorry. It's all, is it in the other set? It's in the other set. Hold on a second.
I just want to be clear about the extent of the landscape.
Mm-hmm. What's the planning, I don't know if you want to see the color or the.
Okay, so just to confirm, so all the planting against the building is in ground, yes, of course.
Yes.
Okay, and then that area, I'm going to, just for the sake of this. Yeah, yard area, so,
Sorry, I'm sorry to interject, but
Sure.
this isn't the right plan.
Oh, yeah.
it's not,
Yeah, that's, it's not, yeah, and you're right. That was my mistake. It's not dramatically different.
I think the principal difference is that in front of the new windows and the enlarged bike room, there's a fairly substantial planter in front of those, as we currently are proposing it.
okay.
Sorry, guys.
Oh, and that still shows an elevator, well, what was to be a machine room, but we don't need one, because if you use the Otis Regen, you don't need a machine room. But it also doesn't show the indents at the back. So, yeah, that one is out of date, unfortunately.
So the area, let's see, the area on the west, I'm sorry, on the right-hand side of this is what, the south elevation, yes? I'm sort of concerned about, not concerned, but I'm just curious about this area in the upper right corner, I guess, which I would interpret this as being all concrete, is that correct?
Yeah.
This big open space, is
think
there
it's
any
worse
reason
than
why
that.
there's so much pavement there?
It's our service parking area. We have to have room for 2 cars, and we have to stripe it.
Seriously? So cars come in off of the street and park there?
The idea is if a plumber or electrician needs to service the building, that they
I
need to
see.
put somewhere to put their car for a long time and access tools, that they have somewhere to do that.
I see, okay.
And there were certain dimensions that we had to maintain in order to afford that space.
I see. And sort of somewhat related, but do you anticipate a transformer as part of this project? And if so, where would it be? Did I miss it? Oh, down the lower right, okay, got it. Thank you. So obviously not visible from the street anywhere, so,
Yep.
okay. Okay, those are my only questions, thanks.
Mr. Noon?
Thank you. Could you talk about, again, the reason behind closing off the courtyard? If I remember going back, the first building, the recommendation was to turn it around, open the courtyard to the street. The second building was favorable to that, and now we've closed it off again. So I wanted to just, can you talk us through that again?
Yeah, so, we tried to maintain that same kind of direction where it feels open to the courtyard, but it's now enclosed by glass largely rather than what was really open to air. There were two drivers there. One was the comments from Planning Commission and many of the members of this board about sound. It didn't end up in the official comments from this board. It did end up in the Planning Commission comments. And then the other was from Planning Commission about the number of bikes. So this bike room is 52% bigger, so it was just elongated, and it addressed both of those concerns at once by enclosing it a little bit more for sound and then also adding more space for bikes. And then the way we tried to address the openness and maintain it was with the glass on the inside and the outside of that bike room, so you could still see in through the glass.
Okay, thank you. And then also the fenestration, I think there was some direction behind making that, varying the fenestration. The reference that you gave of I think it was the canary, did not have that. And so was there not an attempt to do that or to vary the fenestration, or can you point out?
Maybe the contrast. Do you want to see the two versions? This is the version that received that comment. And then this is what it is now. So Sean, you want to talk about the evolution of the fenestration?
Well, it happened, together with all the other changes, of course, because there's been some pretty substantial amendments to the plan by moving the elevator forward, by expanding the bike room. Those opened up opportunities to alter the fenestration across the front of the building, and that then sort of suggests that you're going to want to do something with the upper level fenestration. And, I think whenever I look at it, I see little things that we can tweak still. But it does end up being a building with, I think, a lot more variety along the streetscape with respect to fenestration and surface articulation.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
No, I'm sorry, that's it.
Mr. Olson?
Yes, could we stay here on this front elevation? Would you talk about your intentions for colors and surfaces on this?
Go ahead. I was going to say, you go ahead.
Gosh, I mean, it's meant to be what you would see in downtown Santa Barbara, Spanish colonial style. The white would be a white stucco. The gray would be one of the traditional Spanish colonial stucco gray colors that you might see around town. Yeah, and the idea was just to create more depth with that darker color and break up the facade.
Certainly,
And the reds are largely clay tile. There's two canopies that are not. I don't know if you had a material choice for these two.
Both of them? All three of them?
well, I think just the small one, I believe, would be probably a canvas canopy, whereas the other two roofs could feature tile. And the idea of using the gray in the center portion was to kind of impart that sense of it not being such an extensive single entity, and giving some space between those two sections of building. Also, it talks about circulation rather than, living places. Very open to suggestions if you have any thoughts that you'd like to share with us.
Well, under comments, I will.
Excellent.
Can you, perhaps this is a question of staff, can the applicant consider colored concrete on the sidewalks?
Chair and Commissioner Olson, that would be a question for Public Works, but I can certainly look into it. And then I also just wanted to state that if we have, if your board requests that you want transportation or engineering staff to attend to answer specific questions at the next hearing, just let staff know, and we can also have them here. The memo was supposed to speak for them at this instance, but that is something that I can look into.
It seems like there's a lot of hope that this part of this structure will draw people in, and some way of doing something other than gray concrete perhaps would be helpful in that. Could we go to the close-up of the balconies?
That side or the other side?
I'm sorry?
This, the other side?
Balconies, yeah.
Yes, well,
Oh.
there was one where it was.
There.
And wasn't there also another one that
on the back.
was enlarged? There, is that one. So is that typical?
That's ground floor only. That's, if you see below, the plan there is ground floor. So those ground floor units that are, you know, kind of the most impacted by Office Max, Sean was attempting to create kind of an outdoor room there.
Above that, there would, I think at this point, we're just proposing the Juliet-style balconies above that.
Wood, Juliet balconies? Or is this wood? The one that we're looking at here?
That structure at this point is conceived of as a wood structure. We have to keep it quite thin because we have to maintain fire access through the back. We have to have that space that they can go straight through. That said, we do anticipate having a wrought iron fence along the back, or a steel fence of some sort that looks like a wrought iron fence. And it also could be incorporated, this kind of a structure could be incorporated with that fence. And so it could be a much lighter kind of a metal structure that you might see where, you know, in a place where you would have vines growing on some sort of a pergola, but that's made out of metal.
And so this typical balcony would be quite different from the others on the, above it, on that elevation.
Yes.
Could we look at those again?
The rear elevation?
It would be here, yeah?
Yeah.
There it is. The bottom one would be the rear elevation. So you can see those are just kind of simple wrought iron balconies there.
And those extend?
Those are Juliet, though.
Those are just Juliet balconies. They would only, you know, come out maybe 1.5 feet or so.
And then the ones that we can see on the side elevation here, you've said there was still some studying necessary for structurally being able to support those?
Yeah, it's a challenge whenever you offer the opportunity for people to get out there and be outside. You don't know how many people they're going to bring with them. And so we're talking to people about how we can best achieve this, but also achieve that lightness that I think everyone wants to see happen, but it's a challenge.
That's all my questions for now. Thank you.
Mr. Whalen?
Thank you, Chair Moore. All but one of my questions have been addressed by other members. I would like to hear the applicants talk about their decision to combine the two circulation systems, that is bikes and pedestrians, whereas staff may care to weigh in on this too with transportation. This is a whole new paradigm, if you will, for bicycle use, and whereas if it were motor vehicles, you would certainly separate them from the pedestrians. But here you've combined them rather than making a separate entryway and portal for the bikes. Could you talk about your decision to do so, to combine those?
Sure. We want the bikes to be kind of a natural progression of the egress. So one that is coming down the elevator would not have to divert from their normal path in order to get to their bike. So it's convenient, and it should be a natural pathway. So come down the elevator, come down the stairs, grab your bike and go. And if you're not getting your bike, it's the same pathway. So just convenience.
If I may jump in on this, bikes are getting quite expensive, or the kinds of bikes that people are buying now are getting quite expensive. It's not unusual to spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on an e-bike in particular. And so by having the exit from the bike room be within the courtyard space, it's an extra level of security also for the bike room. Whereas if they open straight out onto the street, there's a bit more of a chance of something going missing or someone getting into that space as you try to maneuver your bike out through the door. That said, down the road, because of the visual permeability of that space, it wouldn't be very hard to convert it to doors that could open from those large glass portals into that space.
All right, thank you. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Well, on that topic of the courtyard and the lobby, so if I'm entering the project, I come through the front doors. And if I'm going to my unit, I would then hang a right and go into that little space and into the elevator, presumably,
Or up the stairs.
or up the stairs. Okay. What is your vision for these amenity spaces? What do you think is going to occur in there?
And 100 is intended to be a kind of more typical lobby, so, couches, places to sit, places to gather, possibly, television for special events.
Okay. So grade-wise, so from the sidewalk to the front door and then into the courtyard, does that courtyard continue to slope up as you're moving towards, I guess, the east?
Towards the back of the courtyard, it slopes up, yes.
Okay.
So just on that point, looking at some of the designs that have come to the board in the last while, there's been indications that there's an opportunity to have stairs in the path of travel as long as there are barrier-free ways to get to places. We had a code consultant take a look at things, and they suggested that we had to basically provide barrier-free access. If we had stairs, there had to be a ramp, which obviously takes up a lot of space, and that was part of what drove the slope of the courtyard. If it turns out that where we have quite a few other ways in and out of the building, if we can keep the courtyard more or less at grade or with minimal slope, I think that would be preferable. It would be a more usable space as a consequence, and it would result in a few stairs at that back entrance, out of the back of the courtyard.
Mm-hmm.
However, somebody wanting to get from the courtyard into their own space would have the other options.
Okay. So in this configuration, you've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units on the ground floor. My question is, so you've designed a lovely courtyard, but you've put the lobby kind of not as a part of that courtyard. So do you expect that people are going to just use this courtyard in any way, or because nothing is really opening out onto it, right, other than a couple of doors?
I mean, the hope is that it would be used. You have that access from the rear that would open into it that anyone, at this point at least, with the sloping floor of the courtyard would be able to access. On upper levels, people can obviously come down the stairs and scoot out into the courtyard, and there are some units, 102 and 107, that open directly onto the courtyard.
Did you, in your design studies, one of the charming aspects about a courtyard is that it can become the lobby, so to speak, right? Did you look at how to work this through so that the elevator's accessed from the lobby side and you don't actually go into a separate lobby? And
I think the orientation of the elevator was driven by the half step up from our design flood elevation.
Yeah.
But open to comments for us to explore.
Okay. And then, I think early on we discussed it, but can you walk us through, I guess so you've got a 10-foot setback on, I guess what you would call the north side. And then a 15-foot setback on the south side for the most
It's
part?
just shy of that.
Okay. And then 5-ish on the back?
5 and 8, depending on, where, well, actually 5, about 6.5, and then 8.
Okay. And the 15-foot size, how did that get arrived at?
So why was it kept at that size rather than some other size?
I guess my question is, yeah, like, was there a reason that, okay, we're gonna put the rear of the building at 5 feet and the sides at something a little bit more roomy? What was the thinking?
The larger setback is driven by fire code and fenestration, the amount of fenestration allowed on the on those facades. But the 10 versus 15 and whether it should be centered or not is a decision I don't recall how we
Honestly, I
arrived at
don't
that.
either. I think it has always been along these lines, and
Yeah, I think it has more to do with those service parking and the width of that, and then
the
you know,
transformer.
pushing the building even further over would have kind of been awkward, I think.
And then you brought up the transformer, which is next on the list. I have not seen a project that's been able to bury the transformer in the back corner like that. Have you vetted that?
We have not.
Okay. And then on the 4th floor, what's the plate height on the 4th floor? Or floor to plate?
They're all anticipated, apart from the first level where you've got the offset for the flood design level. They're all 10 feet,
Floor to ceiling,
floor to floor.
floor to floor. So 9-ish then to floor to ceiling? Somewhere in there? Okay. Any follow-up questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I noticed, did you eliminate a whole unit on the south corner?
So are you talking about on the top level or
Top
on
level.
all levels? On the top level, it basically shifted location. If you can imagine that sliding to the south
Ah,
and the much bigger bridge open amenity area.
okay.
Well, we did lose a unit on that corner, right? We had 209 and 309, and we don't have a 409. So it's different, but there's no
I
unit
think, yeah, we had a 309, we had a 409 before, and now we have a 410, just because of location though, right?
Oh, we have a 210 and a 310.
It's the same number of units.
It's the same number.
Same number of
Oh,
units.
we did not lose a unit,
Yeah.
but we lost one on the corner. Okay, so
Yes.
two different things, yeah. We added 410, we lost 409,
So
so
410,
I understand what you were saying now.
410 was at the very corner before.
Yes.
Essentially, yeah,
Yes.
because, now our bridge element is narrowed, so
Okay,
basically
got it.
that unit shifted over in favor of that corner deck.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are we ready for comment? Or Ms. Anderson, you're good with questions? Okay.
Chair Moore, I wanted to just clarify
Yeah.
within the board. There was reference to sound in that courtyard. Does anyone in the board remember that being addressed?
There was some discussion on the concern of the usability, livability of the courtyard if it was open to the street noise.
It was, my recollection, it was discussed at this board, I'm sorry if I may. It was discussed at this board, did not become official comment from this board. It was an official comment from Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to comments. Who would like to start? Mr. Olson? Sure. Go ahead.
So my comment in general is that it's noticeable that this current revised elevations and plan are light years away from that first one and much more to me, much more pleasing to the eye. That being said, I still have a couple of comments. I think that if we go to the elevation, this is very slight and probably not very meaningful, but that little bit of tile above the doors into the bike room seems like lip service to me, and I'm not quite sure that that seems to fit in my way of seeing that, but it's probably a personal opinion. I think also there's some opportunity, and Chair Moore pointed this out on the entryway, on the wall of the elevator that faces the entry. There is some opportunity there, it seems like, for landscaping, for green, and that might help that be more inviting.
Sorry, if I may, I'm trying to understand where you mean?
So if we go to the floor plan. Now, there, where the elevator is on the entry, see, I think that it says elevator, yeah. So it would be the ocean side wall of the elevator.
Oh, okay, so within that sort of opening through into the courtyard,
Yes.
doing something on that wall.
Yes.
It would be a nice place for some sort of an art installation.
It's
It
also
would
the-
all be shaded, and so it may not grow very well, but an art installation in there would be
We do
beautiful.
grow things in shade,
Yeah.
but yes. So also, we talked about colors, and I do think it's a good idea to change the color between the buildings, and I think that's helpful. Gray isn't a color I would have chosen, but I do like the white to the warm side, warmer than the rest of the building, would be my choice, but again, it's a personal choice.
So going from more of a pure white on the larger masses to a warmer white in that center area, okay.
And we've talked about bicycles, and we've talked about Paris. We've talked about motorcycles. And my experience in Paris is that the motorized vehicles, bicycles, are what's prevalent. And it seems like it might not, even though these days most of us are liking electric bikes, it seems like that if we take cars away, that motorized vehicles, bicycles might be on the horizon somewhat, so it might, but that's not our purview. See if I have anything else. I don't, and I just want to say again, I think this is going in the right direction. I think it's quite improved. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Whalen? You wanna follow
Sure,
up?
thank you, Chair Moore. Picking up on a couple of thoughts of Mr. Olson. But first, I appreciate the changes in the development to date, and a good example of that is what would that be, the west wall, the articulation of it. It doesn't seem so dank, for lack of a better word. And if you could continue developing that in the way that, say, San Francisco townhouses do with bay windows and angles and different ways for light to come in, I think that would improve those units on the back. A nod to the city planning memo on the transportation. I do regret the loss of those mature brachychiton tree or trees. It's a magnificent stand that's elemental to understanding that block. I realize the problems that you have with getting an access in there, but I really regret the loss of that spectacular tree or trees there. Let's see, my biggest focus and my comment is going to be with this entry portico, and it's shown right here. It doesn't seem to be substantial enough as an entryway. It looks rather weak, and sort of a kit of parts that has been assembled here. This might be drawn longer to the arched windows, the rounded arches, seems like there isn't a lot of standardization. You showed us a marvelous example of one of your favorite buildings in town, and now I'm going to veer into the variation of window sizes. That illustration that you showed us had different size windows at different floors. You might explore that. But really, back to the portico, this idea, and I'm veering into planning territory here, of combining bikes and pedestrians. I happen to have a lot of prejudices from working at the university for 30 years and know what the impact of mixing bikes and people in swinging doors, whether they're automatic or not. I think that's going to be a big, big problem for the actual users of this, and then exacerbated by the use of glass or glazing, moving bikes through there. Perhaps you have to have some sort of iron railing with glazing in there. But that whole assembly, and you had a tighter shot of the portico, doesn't seem to fit with the rest of the window or opening articulations in the manner that some parts of it were glazed and some were open, so permitting light and air and sound to transmit through there. But there's still that portico, to me, lacks the importance of a major entryway, and whether it's in size or volumes of the moldings, or maybe it extends a little further, something about that I think needs some more work.
Thank you.
Let's see. And likewise, to the credit of the remaining Brachiochitons, it will mediate the blankness of the elevator tower. I think you have something interesting going on top. It could use the 4 openings. I couldn't quite see if they were on all 4 sides, but perhaps they're a little bit overscaled, and some more work on that. I still have some reservations about a big blank wall facing the street. Trees, as this project is proving, are not permanent, whereas the big blank wall might be. Thank you, Chair Moore.
Thank you. Mr. Newton?
Yes, thank you. Maybe the odd one out here, but I think the direction of closing the courtyard was less appealing to me. I liked the idea of that previously, and to get the bike parking, it seemed that there was maybe enough amenity space inside that could still be accommodated without having to close that off. And then just again to reiterate, maybe some further study of the fenestration and how those vary. But I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Black?
Well, generally speaking, I think what's been presented is a really nice improvement over what we saw in the past. So I'm kind of on the fence about the opening the major entry. It doesn't bother me that much, although I do see the value in your former design with the wrought iron opening to the courtyard. So I'm kind of on the fence about that. But I mean, generally speaking, I think that the project is come a long ways and is, you know, in my mind, is positive. Thanks.
Okay. Vice Chair Six?
Thank you, Chair Moore. Yes, I really appreciate the changes since last review. This is approaching and is at that point where the Santa Barbara Spanish language is being reflected, and I'm very happy about that. And especially the movement, the notch in the south corner really helps the massing and the scale of this thing. You know, one of the elephants in the room is the overall mass, bulk, and scale. I think there was probably 3 or 4 of the planning commissioners who were still not happy with it. But, well, first of all, I think the trees, you know, just driving here today, you know, the trees are a significant massing along the street. And I don't think this becomes it harmonizes with those trees. I think that's a blessing, a blessing. You know, and it is the size that we're looking at in the new world, and in our objective design standards speak to this type of size and perfect location. So I think that I myself can put the overall mass Boken scale to bed, and especially with the manipulations that have occurred since we first saw it. I do think, and I think that Dennis touched upon it. I think there's some simplification that could be made in especially the upper or the right-hand side of the front elevation. Now, all the different languages, the different sizes of French arches, and you know, the little canopies and so forth. I think that be far more simplified, and glass lines brought back, and matching, and in the idea of, as I said in my questions, to expand the width of the hard space between between the front of the sidewalk and the building for all those bicycles and so forth that are going to be there. I think that pushing back room 101 amenity with pushing the glass line at least, and if not the columns between, and pushing those glass lines back to provide more depth and more hardscape would be, and matching it along the glass line of the bike, and pushing the glass line of the entry to the courtyard back, all in the same language and in the same row. Alignment would simplify things and really help the composition. As I mentioned, I really think that a study at least to confer with Public Works about jogging the sidewalk back and increasing its depth all along the building would be a solution to get more area on the frontage. As I think my painful question about the balconies on units 201 and 301, I think it would really help to lighten up that enclosed balconies to floor 2 and floor 3 above the courtyard entry would help tremendously to lighten that up. So if we can go to, let's go to, well, I think this front elevation, I think that you'd be very, very concerned to iron fence off the ground floor open area on the very north corner of this building. Can we go to floor plan, site plan? Yeah, that's good. Yeah, see, as you go in that portico there, you're going to have a lot of vagrants, a lot of issues with homeless and so forth in that area. I think you do have the other side fenced off and so forth, but I think this is an attractive nuisance here.
If I may, just, you can, oh, sorry, not allowed? Okay.
And then if we go to the northwest elevation,
Are we have elevations in this? We don't, right?
No, down at the very bottom there. Okay,
I know we got
we
them
can
here.
find them there. Back up.
Yeah, no, this is the lower one.
okay, on the right-hand side, right-hand side, these belly buttons, belly bands between floors are not part of Spanish, and I would think that hopefully those are just graphic items that are drafting items that, that I think that occurs on the rear elevation and the back elevation, back side of the elevation of the, I don't know what it is, north, south, east, west, or whatever it is. And if we go to the southeast elevation, can you zoom up to the upper floor there? I think your commendable balcony at the corner. There is the kitchenette that's right there. Could that kitchenette be pulled back 3 feet and the balcony and its cornice and so forth be continuous across that whole block?
Yeah, we can do that.
I think that would really help instead of having an awkward dog leg and
Sure.
nonsensical continuation of the cornice at the balcony lip. Talked about, oh, and then the final is, it's in this, I think that you can Hispanicate a lot more of the flat parapet that's evidenced here on the left-hand side of this elevation and continues around. More extension, just, it's just a little too contemporary right now. Maybe there's a curve and more of an extension on the very topmost band and a curve below it, or I think it's just too contemporary looking at this point. So I think you could easily do that. And then finally, the wood trellis on the back. You alluded to other materials. I think that it just needs to be more appropriate for the language that you're successfully pursuing here.
Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Anderson, any comments?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what has been said, and I think we could possibly look at reducing the 4th floor to an 8-foot ceiling and reducing the size of those windows to really read into the Spanish colonial style that you can see downtown in Santa Barbara. And that would help with the fenestration changes and with the overall appearance, too, of the height of this project. I also think that the courtyard I feel like it just won't really get used with 2 units walking out to it. It's sloping, and I think it would be best if there could be some study with connecting that with the amenities or the lobby, really integrating that more into the entryway and considering that as like maybe a paseo of part of this project. You've kind of started the language on the side next to a neighbor of a paseo, and it would be interesting to almost mimic that, since this is really geared towards walkability and bikes, and even if possible, connecting all the way to the back of the building. I don't know if that would even be possible, but yeah, those are my comments.
Okay.
Chair Moore, before you go in,
Yeah.
can I just catch up on a few? If we look at this elevation, the large rectangular shape of the trash opening, trash room, big doors should be finessed a little with, maybe a French arch or something. And then if we go to the northwest elevation, I guess it's the front elevation, yeah, here. I think there's remnants remaining, there's a little, again, belly band above the trash room and slender pilasters. I think that there could be a more Spanish language to that. And then on the northwest elevation, sheet down, yes.
What was that? That was the one on the bottom is the northwest.
Oh, okay, yes, it is. So there's a row of horizontal shaped windows on the ground floor that are not, that could be, use some Hispanication if I see where that is? 4 of them there in a row. And then I think it would help, I think it's this elevation. Yeah, that you have an indent for your stairs. Those windows along there would be more Hispanic if they were centered in that opening. That's it.
Okay, thank you. I guess my own comments are, I agree this has come a long way from where you started. And I think it's in a funny position where it's parts of the building are getting close to a very traditional Santa Barbara style and appearance, and other parts are sort of off in some way or another, not quite there. So it just needs to go that extra 5%, I think, and, with some, a little bit of sculpting, I think you can get there. So what I mostly appreciate is sliding that corner unit over and creating some relief at at least at the 2 front corners on the street. I think that's going to make a big visual impact and reduce the apparent scale of the building. I would encourage you to look at areas where you have, like for instance, where number 3 is in the middle there with the guardrail over the entry piece. Like areas like that are kind of, they're a little, it's a little odd to have a full guardrail coming down to like a shape like that, or at least in a traditional sense. Most likely that would have been either some sort of a roof shape, so like a tiled roof or something like that that's sloping backwards to fill in and create that guardrail. And the same could be said at the corner on the left-hand side here. If there was a tiled roof that was wrapping that outdoor deck element, I think that would go a long way into taking this project into a more realized sense of what a Santa Barbara traditional design would be. Likewise, these kind of floating balconies that you've got on the south and north facades, I don't know what you're going to do there to integrate them, but look to a more traditional design. I would just encourage you to figure out something at least that you could point to that this is how they might have done it. I agree that the window sizes and variety need continued refinement and study. Let's see. I think you're going to need to figure out this transformer location, because most likely it's not going to be back there. And that may contribute to some tweaks to your design of that little service yard area there. So I think in general, just another step of refinement and detailing. And I would agree that anywhere it's possible to lower that fourth floor plate to look at doing that. And that doesn't have to be continuously across the entire project, but look for locations to vary that. Okay. Any other comments before we go to a motion? No?
Just a question, Chair Moore. Your variations of window sizes and types, is it mostly, as I feel strongly, the ground floor front, or do you feel the upper floors are too monotonous?
I would say to look at the examples within the city. Generally, as you progress upwards, the windows get a little smaller. That's just kind of the way it is. But
Okay, I get it.
as members of the HLC would say, always look for areas to add poetry to the elevation, right? Somebody like to make a motion? And I guess we could start, so they're here for project design approval.
We had hoped to be.
And it sounds like folks here on my left are not on board with that. So let's do. Oh, that's true. But we can say that they're ready for project design approval. So I think we could take a straw vote and ask the board to weigh in whether this project is ready in its current form for project design approval. Okay? So let's do that.
I'll take the straw vote. Chair Moore?
No.
Vice Chair Six? Board Member Anderson?
No.
Board Member Black?
No.
Board Member Noon?
No.
Board Member Olson?
I say no, but I do think that the conditions that you've mentioned, both you and Mr. Six, if they were included, I think it would be ready for that. And so,
What's in front of us today?
no.
And Board Member Whalen?
I would reiterate Mr. Olson's comment and vote no.
Thank you.
Okay, so who would like to put together a motion that encompasses those comments? Anybody?
Mr. Chair,
Okay.
so I'll make a motion for indefinite continuation back to the full board with the following comments. That, number one, the board very much appreciates the refinements to the building to bring it into a more Santa Barbara Spanish language. Appreciates the movement of the upper story and setbacks to some of the setbacks in the front elevation to provide more variation. That the overall mass, bulk, and scale is appropriate to the area and appropriate to the overall intent of the densities and form the city is pursuing. Number three, that the for let's say in regards to the site plan, that the applicant shall find or attempt to find ways to widen the hardscape between the front property line and the building for the busy activities that will be included there. Sub-comment to that comment would be the applicant shall resolve the appropriate location for the electrical generator. Transformer. The sub-item under that site is to study enclosing or minimizing nuisance use of the northern corner or the northwest side of the property. Anything more on site? Don't think so.
I'll second that to this point and add, if you would entertain it, add that the applicant shall continue to study the courtyard and to find ways to connect the.
Better relate it to the lobby.
Better relate it to the lobby and interior spaces,
uses.
as well as add additional landscaping and ground materials.
Great, thank you. And then new item, then as far as the architecture, the majority of the board desires, the board would like to see more finesse in the upper stories of window sizes and types. The board would like to see a simplification and unification of the right-hand side of the bottom floor as far as window types, glazing alignments, continuous glazing alignments to be similar, set back from the street. That the applicant shall study a different language, perhaps more light or perhaps more light of the lighter in massing of the 2 stories above the main entry where the covered balconies are. Okay, I think that then as far as the then if we move to the can we say those first comments, well, the upper story window fenestration variation is a general comment. And then we move down to another one that says the northeast elevation. And then the comments about, so a new comment, northeast elevation. And then those following comments about making the glass alignments and variations of the ground floor more simplistic, more simple organized, or whatever I said. You follow me? Okay, okay. And also in that same east elevation, the idea of restudying the 2 stories above the courtyard entry. Also in that same subsection, that same comment would be restudy the belly board and the detailing around the trash room to be more Spanish. Restudy the small overhang above the 3rd window to the bike storage. Then we move on to the south. Well, we can go, let's see. What did we just do, the northeast? Then we go to the northwest. Okay, good, thank you. To restudy the horizontal windows on ground floor, to restudy the windows in the indent for the vertical stair, to eliminate the belly bands on the right hand portion of that elevation, and to study a more Hispanic profile of the flat roof parapet. Then going to the next elevation, if we could come up sheet 1 or down sheet 1, the southeast elevation, same with the belly bands. Oops. Restudy the extent of the end wall of the kitchenette at the south corner balcony to make more continuous the balcony detailing across the total width of those 3 bays. To study corbels or additional pilaster elements to reduce the cantilever dimension of the Juliet balconies. To provide a more Hispanic flavor to the doors to the trash room. And same for the flat roof parapet that we mentioned on the last elevation. And then if we go to the southwest elevation, to same applicable comments as the previous elevations, and to restudy the material and design of the ground floor patio enclosure trellises. Is that it?
Okay.
I think we maybe wanted to mention the plate heights on the first floor as
Oh,
well.
yes. And then a brand new item is to study areas with the most impact that plate heights could be brought down from the 9 feet proposed throughout to 8 foot in impactful, I've already said that, in areas. Now, I think we need that read back. If we don't have any
So let's read that back.
discussions or adds to that?
Let's hear what,
Okay.
let's hear what's on the page.
All right, thank you. So the motion is continue indefinitely with the following comments. The board appreciates the refinement to the building to bring it to a more Santa Barbara Spanish language and appreciates the movement of the upper story and setbacks to the front elevation to provide more variation.
Can we just do overall massing, variations in massing instead of that one item of moving the unit?
Sure, so just overall.
Overall manipulation, articulation of massing.
Next, the overall mass, bulk, and scale is appropriate to the area and overall intent of identities that the city is pursuing.
Of what?
Of-
Overall intention?
Intention of the identities that the city is pursuing.
Densities.
Identity?
I think you said densities.
Densities.
Oh, densities.
Yes.
Thank you, my apologies. In regards to the site plan, the applicant shall attempt to find a way to widen the hardscape between the property line and building for the busy activities that will be included.
Front property line.
To the front property line and building for the busy activities that will be included. The applicant shall resolve the appropriate location for the electrical transformer and study minimizing the nuisance of the northwest side of the property.
Nuisance uses of.
Nuisance use of the northwest property. Okay. The applicant shall continue to study the courtyard and find ways to better relate it to the lobby and interior spaces, as well as add additional landscaping and ground materials. As far as the architecture, majority of the board would like to see more finesse in the upper stories of the window sizes and types. The board would like to see simplification and unification of the right-hand side of the bottom floor.
Now, this is, that is a new item. The item above on the finesse is one general item, and then the new item is going into the northeast elevation, the front elevation.
Okay, so the board would see the simplification, unification of the right hand is part of the northeast elevation comments?
That's correct.
Okay, one moment. Okay. And then, let's see. The applicant shall study different language, perhaps more lighter in massing of the stories above the main entry where the covered balconies are, and restudy the belly board and the detailing around the trash room to be more Spanish style.
Those are two separate. Belly board and pilasters is a complete separate item, not related to the 2 stories above the entry.
And then I also had in that restudy the small overhang above the third window with the bike storage. Is that a separate item or part of the previous?
Small overhang. It's
On the ground, first floor above the bike room, just a little roof.
Yeah, that's, I'm confused now. So we have, the 2 stories above the entry. And then we have another separate motion regarding the belly band and pilasters at the trash room, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the restudy the small overhang of the third windows to the bike storage.
Oh, yes, that's the separate one, yes. Okay.
Separate one?
Yes.
Okay. And then on the northwest, to restudy the horizontal windows on the ground floor, restudy the windows of the vertical stair, eliminate the belly bands on the right-hand portion of that elevation, and study a more Hispanic profile of the flat roof parapet.
Yes.
Okay. On the southeast elevation, Same with the belly bands, same comment with the belly bands, and restudy the extent of the wall, of the end walls of the kitchenette of the south corner balcony to make a more continuous balcony detailing.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Study the corbels or additional pilaster? I'm not familiar with that term.
Corbels or pilasters, yes.
Pilaster
each
elements
side.
to reduce the cantilevers of the dimensions of the Juliet balconies to provide a more
Cantilevered dimension.
cantilevered dimension of the Juliet balconies to provide a more Hispanic flavor to the doors of the trash room.
That's a separate idea.
That's a separate comment?
Yes.
Okay.
The doors of the trash room is a completely separate thing from the corbels.
Okay. And then southwest elevation, same applicable comments, and study the material design of the ground floor trellis.
Yes.
And then study the areas with most impact to the plate heights that can be brought down from 9 feet proposed to 8 feet in areas
On top floor.
on the top floor.
I apologize.
It's thorough. Which is good. Okay, any discussion?
Quick discussion item.
Yes.
Am I to understand that the main entrance is that material, doors, is that just all steel and glass, basically seals off the courtyard from the street? Is that the intent?
Yeah,
As
it's
opposed,
open air, the top above, so you can see it's a little bit gray. Down below, that's glass, and then the
right.
little area above that is open air. But it is
So I guess what
steel.
came up for me was if in fact that was wrought iron fencing and gates, something very traditional. You know, it's not, obviously not as extensive as what you had on your previous iteration, but at least it would give you an opportunity to be less of a sort of a storefront, which is what it looks like to me. And be able to use wrought iron in a very traditional way, have that openness, if you feel like, you know, that.
Would
I
the,
will
I don't know,
gladly,
it just came from.
would the maker of the motion
yes, I will
accept?
gladly add additional comment under the
Just say
It's
the
really
main-
hard for us.
just say the main-
northeast elevation
The main entry.
and the main entry
Main entry.
to study a wrought iron barrier rather than a glass barrier as the reduced opening would not produce much, a significant amount of noise in that courtyard.
Okay,
Thanks.
anything else? No? Okay, let's take our vote.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I'll take the roll call vote. Chair Moore?
Yes.
Vice Chair Six?
Yes.
Board Member Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member Black?
Yes.
Board Member Noon?
Yes.
Board Member Olson?
No.
And Board Member Whalen?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, Mr. Olson, would you like to say anything?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's confusing who the architect is here. And I think our comments are excessive. And it diminishes the role of the applicant's architect for us to make a list like this. And the architect has proven himself. He's brought to us something that is much improved. And for us to redesign this from this table seems inappropriate.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Let's take a 2-minute break, please. Mr. Noonan?
Yeah, I need to abstain. This is from the office.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
You read the project description, then we can jump in. So item number 3, this is a continued item here for project design approval, 601 Santa Barbara Street. And this is a proposal for a new 3-story, approximately 53-foot tall, 64,000 square foot police station building and associated 84,000 square foot parking structure at the existing Coda commuter parking lot. Existing police operations currently located at 4 separate sites will be consolidated into the new project site. Grading includes 22,000 cubic yards of export. A total of 23 tepu trees and 12 oak trees would be removed. The existing bus stop shelter on Coda Street and the plaques would be relocated on site. Project received height exception and development plan approvals by the Planning Commission. Project requires project compatibility findings and compliance with the PC resolution, and was last year April 19th. And that's it. We can start with some words from the planning staff.
Sure, just real quick. So since the last time you saw this project, it did go to the Planning Commission for review of their environmental document. Then it went on to the City Council, who approved the environmental document, the mitigated negative declaration. And then back in August of this year, the Planning Commission did give it approval for the development plan approval. So they have no land use approvals. So now they're back to you for project design approval and final eventually.
Okay, and then do we have the minutes for the motion from last time?
And Chair Moore, just to clarify, these are the minutes from the April 19th, 2021. So I just wanted to reiterate that.
Yes, that's what we're looking for. Okay. We just read through that. It's been a while. Okay. If we could scroll down to okay. Okay, are we all on board? Yep. Okay, welcome back. If you could
Thank you,
introduce
Chair Moore.
yourselves.
Brian Cornell.
Jeff Hornbuckle.
Courtney Miller.
So we received Planning Commission approval in August, and since then, we've been busy developing our project team and really drilling down on the program with the new chief. So there have been some changes that she has initiated, all of which are good. One specific one, for instance, is that dispatch was located there in the corner that we're looking at. And that was something that was specifically directed to us against our experts' better judgment way back. But the chief now agrees with our experts' better judgment, and we've moved it to the third floor. And we're going to put more people-oriented, less of an intense use there on the corner to help open that up. We wanted to show you the renderings that we showed the Planning Commission because you guys have not seen this. And in going through all of the things we're going through right now with the entire consultant team, I will tell you that our intent is to come back to you guys multiple times. We're in fact going to reschedule for you as a continuance in a month to come back with what's going on with the plan. But we felt that, and the city agreed with this, it makes sense for us to receive PDA based on the Planning Commission approval package, assuming that you agree with that, and then come back with changes. So, for instance, one of the things in your minutes, and we can see them here in this sketch, is the 3 windows there on the second floor, and even the windows up on the third floor. There was a comment to address those and reduce their size, and we're in the process actually of doing that. But this is the project. This is the project that went to the Planning Commission, and it is essentially, the project with refinements that we want to work with you guys to implement. So let's just keep going through the rendering so you can see. So this is the latest entrance shot of the lobby element, and the tower, which was modified, as you know, from the last time, or from previous reviews from all of you. Let's go to the next shot. So this shows those 3 windows, which are reducing in size, but they're still a little larger than what you wanted to see. And then, let's go to the Coda Street side. So there's that corner. There was a comment about the signage on this corner. I'm not sure that we agree with that. We really want this signage to be there at a pedestrian level rather than putting it on the building, but we can discuss that. Continuing down, one of the comments that you mentioned was this stair tower, and so we've added this sort of oriel element to that tower to give it a little bit more character. And of course, as you know, we worked with you guys a lot in terms of improving this side along Coda. This plinth that you see is where there is going to be a bus stop here, so that's good news, which is something you asked for, and that little plinth is going to be the Lincoln School commemorative plaque. So that is, the feeling of the building. If you'd like, we can go to the elevations. I wanted Courtney to have a chance to address some of the comments. And since I know that you're a little bit late on time, why don't we move to Courtney, and then I think we should focus on questions from the board.
Okay, thank you, Brian. It's great to be here again. The main comment that I wanted to address, I think Brian covered the question about the bus stop. But there was, I think, still some concern around the paving pattern that we had proposed. And so I just wanted to speak to that. And in addition to kind of the arrival or entry moment that we have at the entrance to the building. So we've done a couple of things since the last time you saw this. We have pulled a palm alley down Santa Barbara Street. So previously we had kind of this palm court that was only at the project entry and sort of reached out towards Santa Barbara Street. So a couple of things have happened. We're now protecting in place all of the existing very tall Washingtonia palms along Santa Barbara Street. There were two that are, northernmost on the plan adjacent to our driveway entry that we were going to remove for visibility, and we've decided now to keep those, which I think is really important. Those palms, we've told stories about this at these meetings, but they march down Anacapa Street and then along Coda and then back up Santa Barbara Street. So I think they're really critical in actually guiding people to the entry of the building. But in addition to that, we've now added kind of a second layer of palms, and they kind of flank the walkway as you go south along Santa Barbara Street. We've addressed some changes in the paving patterns there. So where the existing palms occur, we've rotated the direction of the pavers, and that kind of flip-flops as you go up the street. But we also provided some enlargements on the, I think, upper left of this page, or maybe it's on the next one, Jeff, of what we have in mind for the paving patterns. So just a couple of options. I think this is definitely something we'll continue to study as we move along. But for now, what we're looking to do is implement more traditional, pattern into this angled form. And again, the idea with having this diagonal form leading up to the entry of the building is twofold. One is it references a north-south orientation and directs the view towards the mountains. It's a visual reference to the mountains. And it also is serving as wayfinding. So it's literally directing people into the entry. And then one other thing too that we like about this pattern is just the fact that it sort of breaks down the formality of the design overall, which is important because we need this building to be inviting. We need it to, feel that way, feel open, and reach out into the community in that way. So I think that's probably covers the comments that were related to our work.
So we are, just final thought, we have to make this building net zero. That's the city mandate. So we are going to be adding more solar panels. So I'll prepare you for that. And we're still in the process of studying how to do that best, because it does matter how it looks. But We're looking forward, as I said, to continue to work with the board to make this building really incredible. But tonight, we want to move it along and get a continuance again in 4 weeks after getting PDA, if you're so disposed, to continue to improve it.
Okay, thank you. With that, we need to open public comment. Do we have anyone with us?
Thank you, Chair Moore. I don't have anyone participating via Zoom. I did receive a speaker slip from Michael Vickers, if you'd like to come up to the stand, please.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate what you guys do. Learned a lot while I've been here and all the detail that you guys look into. It's amazing. Really why I'm here is I'm part owner of the house on 602 Santa Barbara Street, and I saw that it was rezoning, and I was wondering if it was just rezoning the odd 601 side, or was it the whole block? Because that was the notice that we got in the mail, and it was pertaining to this particular meeting. And I know you guys are mostly going over the aesthetics of the building and stuff like that. And I noticed that you guys hadn't said anything about zoning, but that was the notice that we got, was to attend this meeting for that very reason.
Well, this meeting is specific to this project, so I
Right.
can't speak towards any rezone or anything like that. Perhaps planning staff.
I'll just say, no, we're not rezoning. This is the notice you received just for this project, I understand. And it's not about a rezone, it's just a change of use on this particular parcel, which is being changed from a parking lot to the
Right.
police station.
Yeah, I grew up
But,
there, so I know
yeah.
it was a school before,
Yeah.
the school, and then became the parking lot, and now
And
it's
it's-
become the police station.
Yeah, so it's not affecting any other parcels around the
Okay.
area.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else?
Thank you, Chair Moore. I do not have any other speaker slips. We did receive written correspondence from Dan Fleury and Richard Unterman, which was distributed to the board prior to this meeting. Back to you.
Okay, let's close public comment and go to questions. Ms. Anderson?
Can you go to the Coda Street rendering, please? Is that, yeah, that one. Is the tower on the left part of the project, or is that the neighbor parcel?
No, that's a little chimney element that we have
Oh,
on the
can we
on
see
the
it
bill.
in the elevation?
Yeah.
Sorry. I don't remember it. And does that house mechanical equipment?
It's likely going to be the exhaust from the basement garage.
Okay. Okay. That's my only question.
Okay, I'm going to jump to the other side, just to keep you on your toes. Mr. Whalen, questions?
Yes, Mr. Cornell, do you foresee any broadcasting antenna for radio and communication purposes? Are they incorporated somewhere, or are they yet to be seen?
Well, yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Jeff.
there is, and it's shown in these renderings.
And where is it shown?
That's for you to find.
Well, I didn't
let me
pass
show
that
you in
test.
Yeah, let me first show you in plan. It's kind of a Where's Waldo. So here it is in plan. So it's located on the third floor of the parking structure. And if I go to the elevations,
It's probably on the side
so
of it.
you can see this is the north elevation. So there it is beyond. Likewise from the Santa Barbara Street elevation, there it is. And from the Coda Street elevation.
Could you zoom in on those?
Sure. Let me go up to the top one, it's a little easier to see.
I see it now. So it's much like a
It's like a little.
a home ham radio old-time tower, but it'll be largely buried in the site, not visible from
Well,
the
yeah,
street.
again, Jeff modeled this, we modeled this before we did the rendering, so it actually doesn't show up in those views.
And then on that same point is the tower, the, if you will, the belfry, is that used for anything?
No, it is the elevator for the building.
It's the elevator
Yeah.
override.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's really over the override, or there's mechanical equipment up in there. So it has the appearance of being open, but it is sealed to some degree, or
Well, that's.
some kind of screening?
Yeah, we're going to have to detail that, because otherwise it'll become a haven for birds.
Pigeons, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, yeah.
That's really the only questions I have. Thank you, Chair Moore.
Okay, now Vice Chair Six. You have questions?
Mr. Olson, allow me to speak.
He's just not going to let you make the motion.
My only question is, can you consider pavers at the Coda entry? Or is that gray concrete because of use and traffic and durability?
Oh, well, that's a good question.
At the garage entry?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can. I don't know.
No, I
It's-
think we looked at that, and there was a reason.
Well, one reason is it is a slope, because we have to get up above the base flood. So that is a little bit of a slope there. So that may be the reason, Courtney.
I also,
Do they need to be permeable, or can they be etched, set in a solid bed for decoration purposes?
Yeah, I'm sure we can do something with that pavement that does,
Hold on.
it's not just concrete.
stop talking.
Okay.
So one of the reasons that we didn't do that is we wanted to announce the project entry with visual cues like enhanced paving, and we did not want to call more attention to this driveway entry because it's not for the public. This is for, the people who work in this building to use. So I think, maybe there could be an argument made to have them there, but, for aesthetic purposes, but I think we'd prefer to highlight the community entry.
Okay, I get it. I get the logic. Those are my questions.
Great. Mr. Olson? Any questions?
Yes. So the area on Santa Barbara Street where the second palm court, or the new palm trees are, did that used to be parking on Santa Barbara Street along
Yes.
there? So I think that's really a good use of that space. so.
Yeah.
And, what is that element on the tower, the elevator tower, that now is delineated as 4 bars?
Oh, yeah, I think we were thinking it would be a clock.
Okay. All my questions.
Mr. Whalen?
Chair Moore, follow-up question for Ms. Miller, and back to that parking lot, the paved parking lot, or near the lobby entry, yes. Are the parking stalls delineated with pavers or paint?
Thanks for that question. I had that in my notes from the last meeting. The intent is to delineate them with pavers, as we always like to do with pavers in a parking lot.
Thank you.
Mr. Black?
You spoke about augmenting the palms along Santa Barbara Street, Courtney. So keeping the Washingtonias, yes, and then the second row against the building, are those Washingtonias as well? Or not?
No, so we were thinking
king?
something smaller, like a king palm there, and you can see it maybe a little better in the renderings, actually.
Well,
Just
I
to
did
have
notice, and they look like kings. so-
smaller, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
smaller.
That's the intent, so they don't compete with the very tall
Okay.
existing
I understand.
Washingtonias.
And then on Coda Street, that bus stop area, so that's all essentially devoted, I assume, for people waiting for the bus? Is that, you've got benches there and what have you? Is that the intent?
Well,
Is
yes.
that how it will be used?
We also, we've been calling that a pocket park. We like it for, just general public use. And the intent was to help that whole streetscape feel more pedestrian and friendly. And it's sort of also a visual terminus to, I forget the name of the road that dead ends into Coda across the street. But I just wanted to mention the bus stop. So right now, we're working with MTD. What you see within the Parkway area is their required loading zone. We also need to provide a shelter, which we're in the process of designing.
Okay.
And it would likely go onto the property, so not where the boarding area is. So we would be doing something custom that's integrated into the project design, is the intent.
I tried to convince them to just keep the little one that Peter Edwards did that's got the mural on it now, but these two didn't like that idea.
And these benches?
That's what they told me to stop talking.
And those benches in that bus stop area, are they to be, like something like this?
Potentially.
Pile benches?
I think, like I said, it's really in process, so that's something we look forward to bringing back for your consideration.
But then on the north and east side where the main entrance is, you've got, as I remember too, but I saw them, they're basically stone planks, if you will, or not planks, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's the intent. So everywhere you've got boulders, the intention is for them, people to be able to sit on them.
Well, we have both. So if, Jeff, if you could show the plan. We have these sort of sliced sculptural boulder elements that you can see, those dark gray
Yep.
objects. And those are also, intended as wayfinding, as they kind of lead you toward the entry. We also have natural boulders that are more located within the streetscape area. So we see, we like the idea of using both. Again, playing with, breaking down the formality. Also, we have some restrictions of what we can put in the parkway there with Public Works. There's a lot of utilities underground. So, footings would be a challenge in that area.
And these sandstone boulders, sculptures, as you labeled them, they're intended, I assume, can people sit on them?
Yes, thank you for asking. They could be for seating. They also are intended to be a security device, so in lieu of bollards at the project entry. So a more sculptural, kind of beautiful way of addressing that. And I think.
And then last question. So are you intending to get some input relative to the choices for paving in the parking lot there? Either that banded or the more
Yes.
squared herringbone? Okay.
Thank you.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay. If we could stay on this plan and scooch down to the lower left corner. What, so you have the driveway entrance to the garage there. What's to the left? There's a little blank space there. No, on the curb side. No, just on the curb.
The hardscape to the left of the driveway.
Yeah, what's that?
I'm actually not sure what that
Good
is.
question.
The planner
It
kind
may-
of stops.
It may be,
Maybe existing.
Yeah, I think that's where the existing parkway stops, and it just hasn't been shown extending to the new
Got it. Okay.
driveway through it.
Okay. So you mentioned changes. Are you contemplating changes, are you contemplating changes that are going to change the massing? Or
No.
the footprint? So just fenestration?
just fenestrations, studying how we're going to incorporate the solar panel array, and just little program changes that are still going on relative to where windows are and, what the security devices are, et cetera. We are going to, it's interesting, we are, we have to basically create a bulletproof building. And so we're also in the process of testing materials and things to allow for that to occur without having to make the building a block building just from a seismic standpoint. So that's the kind of thing that's going on, which, will potentially affect openings. But no, I mean, right now, the things we're working on are really refinements that are design development refinements from this design that I think you all hopefully are going to like once we finalize them, and that's why we want to come back in a week. I mean, in a month. Sorry, Jeff. Didn't mean to scare you.
Next week.
Yeah, next week.
Is the intention for the building to be all one color?
Yes.
Okay. Vice Chair Six? You're itching.
Yeah, I have a follow-up. And this is to Courtney. I looked up, you're selecting for the foremost courtyard, the Pindo Palm. And I'm not a landscaper, but I looked images of the Pindo Palm on the internet, and they're all very scruffy and fat, and are you confident, and the rendering certainly shows a very delicate palm, and I was wondering if you're confident with that species selection.
Thank you for that question. I think, did you have something to add?
The four, I'm referring to the four palms.
He's talking about the palm court. At
The four palms in the palm court.
Palm court.
Which we do have listed as Butia. We love that palm. It is very fat, the trunk,
And
like very
scruffy.
much.
And scruffy.
And so I'm not sold on it yet. I think we're going to continue to evaluate that particular species. It's one of the most critical pieces of the design.
Absolutely.
But we also have to choose something that is low water. So we have a bit of a challenge there. But heard your comment, yes.
Thank you.
Well, we've got the landscape plan here. So the paving pattern that you've selected for the kind of the special pattern, that encompasses the pedestrian entrance and then the driveway entrance up to the sidewalk. And then, but it doesn't extend into the apron or the drive, like up the sidewalk from that point. Is there a reason for that?
You're really catching everything.
Well, I don't know.
I
Assumed there was a reason.
I was looking at this today and thinking that it does need to extend. I'm not sure why we stopped it short.
Okay.
Honestly, I think it needs to extend all the way up to where that upper wall, and then at least beyond, maybe
Yeah,
to the property line.
Yeah.
Right. And then
So we'll look at that.
the next logical question is, it doesn't seem, so you've identified special areas on Santa Barbara Street, but that paving pattern or a special paving pattern continues all the way down the sidewalk on Santa Barbara Street, but that's not the case on Coda Street. Is there a reason for that?
Yes, we really wanted to, again, direct people to the building entry. So if you cross the street at the Coda Santa Barbara intersection, that you are directed clearly to where the building entry is, up Santa Barbara Street, versus going to the left along Coda Street. And then similarly wanted to highlight the kind of pocket park area further down the road. So I think that it's very specific and intentional that way.
Okay. Would you consider a different pattern for the pocket park area that's special for that zone?
Potentially, I think it could have a slightly different identity. I think we're always leery of having too many different details in a project. We want it to be, relatively consistent.
And what do you think, and I'm sorry, I'm asking a lot of questions, but what do you think about the quote-unquote historical aspect of this little bus stop and the plaques and things like that, should that relate to what you're proposing here? Should there be some historical relationship, or is it, you've got a little bit more modern take on that area?
I guess I'm not sure what you're asking regarding the plaques specifically and integrating those into the design, or?
Potentially, yeah, and doing that in a way that's a little more looking backwards to the history of that.
So interpreting the history into the paving
I don't know.
as an idea.
Potentially.
I think
That influencing the choices in that area.
that's a great question. I think absolutely. The plaques are integral, very important part of this project and the history of this site. So I think overall that is the intent, yes, that they're very well integrated.
I do want to just add regarding that, the third floor window band that we have of those large windows was really inspired by the Lincoln School, which had those big windows up at the upper level for the classrooms.
Okay. Mr. Whalen, go ahead.
Yes, a follow-up question to further bedevil Ms. Miller. If you could go back to the corner of Coda and Santa Barbara.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, the corner. There's a rectangle there that doesn't have paving in it. Is that one of the dreaded utility boxes?
Yes.
Is it a traffic control box of like 6 feet tall
Yes.
and it has to be there?
Yes.
That is so unfortunate.
We have a lot of utilities on that corner. I mean, you can see there's 2 sewer
Yes.
person holes, and that white bit within the parkway is, ideally we'd love to plant that, but that is full of utilities.
Yeah,
Access covers and, and then they go up Santa Barbara Street as well. So we will do our best to make sure that the design is custom and
Thank you.
very well integrated, but we are up against the requirements of Public Works in all of these spaces as well, so. Thank you.
I think the upper right, Jeff, it would show if that's what it
not there.
is.
It's the other side.
I think it's in the ground.
Yeah, it's just a ground.
So it's just
You
in
can
the
see
ground.
there's a-
So it's not above ground.
Oh.
It's below, see, it's just a big, it's just, it has to be concrete.
So the void is just an access panel at
Correct.
surface level.
That's correct.
Oh,
What a
yes.
relief.
You thought it was
I thought it was one of those
three-dimensional.
big
No, no,
traffic
no.
control
No, they're all
boxes
flat.
that were
They're all
as big
just
as a
covers.
refrigerator.
No.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, they're all flat.
Okay. Well, let's move it on to comments, please. Who'd like to start? Mr. Whalen.
I'll start. And to continue with the paving, I believe I made the comment on the earlier paving pattern, which was quite sinuous or serpentine, that it didn't really match the building. And again, while this is rather elegant, I'm not sure how it reflects the design of the building. And wherever possible, and I know landscape always suffers this when the budget comes due at the end of the project, that paving, these elaborate paving areas could be sacrificed without any loss to the building. Let's see, what else did I have to say about that? Yes, in a very general sense, this is one of the most important public buildings that the city will have, and I think it should have a direct relationship to the county courthouse as a public building. And moving directly from that, Mr. Cornell, I don't believe the county courthouse has any signage on it at all. And signage to me is either commercial or directional. We don't really, it's sort of commercial in this sense, but if it's directional, it isn't really clear where it's sending you, although Ms. Miller made it clear that it's the paving pattern that is directional. So very carefully consider what you want the signage to do in concert with guiding people to the front door, that is pedestrians, or even cars whooshing by. I can see people, for example, on this proposal, seeing police department making a left turn and trying to go into the private lot. So very carefully consider where that goes. I would avoid putting it on the building. I think you made the right move here on a low wall of some iteration. And then thank you, Mr. Kernau, for pointing out that historic imagery of the school on the windows of the third floor. To me, it looks like an addition that was made to the building, a rather unsympathetic addition, that these large, massive windows, again, they may not be seen from the street that much, but they do look out of character with the rest of the finely crafted elevations that you've put on both of the street sides. The tower also has improved markedly. I think it's finally found a home. I question the need for a clock. Does anybody really need a clock that, like this one, doesn't list the right hour, and you could suffer small slings and arrows of criticism that the police can't even keep the time correctly. And then back to the glazing. Most of the windows in the first and second floor have what I would say an appropriate scale for their mullions and muntins, but at the lobby, it becomes much larger. And personally, I would like to see a rather unified module for the glazing used throughout, because at the lobby and that entry area, it takes on a different modern characteristic that moves farther away from the Spanish colonial revival and even that relationship to the courthouse, which I think is so important. I think those are all my comments. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Olson?
Yes. I'd like to compliment the team on moving this very utilitarian building into the realm of something beautiful for Santa Barbara. I think it's very important. I think the strides you've made on that have been noticeable, and I very much appreciate them. I agree with Mr. Whalen regarding signs. I think that's a big deal where there's signs that they're needed, and it's a big deal where they show up on this building. As far as moving the name of the building off from the building onto that stone piece in front, I think that's where it belongs. I think that's a good change. I think the Palm Court is bold, and I think it helps delineate this building in a special way, so I totally approve of that. As far as the warning about what we might expect to see in the way of solar panels next, I think that there's a certain amount of understandable resistance from this board to solar panels, and it doesn't include me, because I think they're in our future, and so they're sort of a badge of accomplishment to be able to see them, even if they're peeking over the top somehow. They don't have to take center stage here, but the fact that they are showing up seems appropriate, and it seems appropriate. The Oriole, I think, was a good addition. I like that. While I agreed with Mr. Whalen about the signs, I disagree about the clock. I think that the courthouse has a clock on it, and it's usually on time. So I think that tower needs something of that sort. And the clock seems as appropriate as I can think of. Those are all my comments.
Okay. Mr. Black?
Well, I think this has really become a very handsome building myself, and I'm very pleased. I certainly, in my mind, certainly deserves project design approval. As far as the signage is concerned, I think it's important to have the signage where you've located it, because it's in an emergency situation and cars are zooming around looking for the police station. I think having that sign on the corner, as you have it, not on the building, but on the wall there, I think is important. And
By the way, I just want to mention, because it's relevant, we're changing the address to Santa Barbara Street.
I saw that. Yeah. Let's see. I think the landscape as it's been proposed is very nice. And as far as the paving pattern in the main entrance parking lot, there's part of me that looks at that sort of striping and I think looks somewhat contemporary to me, as opposed to the other pattern which you have, basically the squares with herringbone infill, which to me strikes me as being just a little bit more on the traditional side, which I think would be appropriate here. So I would probably favor that second one and not the stripes. So how that affects all the areas where you're showing the stripes at the bus stop and then obviously the parking lot. But that's just my view on it. But all in all, I think it's very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Six.
Yes, it's a gorgeous project, getting even better. It's beautiful. I guess it's my time to clash with Mr. Olson. I think that, I know that we can't touch the solar because of the new ordinances, but I would hope that the designers would be sensitive to where those are and try to diminish them and accentuate the classic elements of the overall project. But opposed to that, and I think if we can pull up to maybe the rendering of the entry. I think even the renderer was confused. I think you need to diminish the entryway to the tower as an entryway. So somehow you see the people walking into the small door at the entry tower.
Yeah. That's an elevator.
Yes, I know, and it's a utilitarian door. It's equipment, so I think it should be reduced in its impact and hidden behind.
Well, no, it is actually, it is a door where somebody, when they go down to retrieve, something that has been stolen or whatever, they can exit straight out of the building at that point rather than having to go through the lobby.
I understand, but maybe there would be a way to diminish its conflict with the real entry. And then my comment about the Pindo Palms, I think that we lost the idea of the Palm Alley being forwarded out to the street to recognize that as the main entry. And then, we've even lost it further by the subtle differentiations of species of palms that you've now introduced up and down the front building. I would suggest that one does a very contrasting sculptural overhead series of arches in black or something that would really contrast with the traditional sense of the building and really make this is different and this is light and it's sculptural and it contrasts with the plantings and so forth. I think I would suggest perhaps that would be an idea to bring back the way to bring out that this is the main entry out further out to the street.
I'm sorry, could I just get some clarification? So you're talking about a structure. Is that what you're saying in
Very
lieu
light
of
structure,
palms?
like a 2 or 3 simple black arches, some kind of contemporary form that marches from the entry out to the street to make it very contrasting with the palm idea. The other minor thing is I think that one is going to need to be careful with the way the perimeter, especially at the corner flat roof and its green roof, how that perimeter is treated, because we certainly don't want to see the underside of old overwooded plants and the garbage that's usually under plantings of that nature. So perhaps it's pulled back ever so slightly with a material band or something to kind of hide the base of those plants and so forth. So it's not so hairy and scratchy and you get it. And I think that because the back entry or the coda entry to the garage is at a slope and very visual to the pedestrian passerbyers, that one should at least consider some, if not as involved as the decorative patterns and so forth in the more focused areas, secondary decorative surface. Those are my comments.
Okay.
Okay, so based on our last comments, I think I would continue studying incorporating stone into the building if possible. And regarding the program of this specific corner, hopefully, in my opinion, I feel like this corner can still be elevated in the design and fenestration, and so I'm hoping that the program of this corner can do that, and we can see some of the changes with that program. And then in regards to the paving and the permeable pavers, I don't mind either of the patterns, but I do think a transition between the different plain concrete to the patterns could be studied, and maybe a plain band or a different pattern, I don't know, but just be studied, the transition between those. I actually think the entry should still be delineated by landscape. I don't know if I agree with a structure addition there, but that's up to you. And the only thing, I don't remember that exhaust vent being there before, and I'm sure it was, and I just don't remember. So I guess just maybe next time let me know, or let us know if it's going to affect any neighbors to the neighbor on the Coda Street. Okay. And yeah, I think those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. My own comments are that I agree this has come a long way, and it's been really well refined. I appreciate the changes to the Coda Street side. I think that's much more successful now. I think the tower is looking a lot better. The landscape looks great. I would defer to the designer on what the appropriate tree species is for that LA into the front door. I think it should be something special and interesting, but I think that's up to you. The paving pattern, I think the diagonal striping to me reads a little, it's almost just sort of like a blown up ADA striping pattern to me. It feels a little like that. Or almost, a no parking zone indication in that little area. So I would come down on the side of the more traditional pattern that you displayed. And then consider if that should be replicated in the bus stop or if that deserves something special. And then my only gripe is the diminutive size of this little lantern hanging on the corner of the building. That needs to be something, this is an important corner, and if there is ever an opportunity to do something extravagant in Santa Barbara, that's something to look at. Okay, Vice Chair Six, you have.
Oh, I just wanted to, I've been talking a lot today, so I can't stop. I think that, you know, such as the pattern in the diagonal patterning, and as I suggest, maybe a contemporary sculpture on the pass through to the entry, I think if they're not integrated in the building, you know, contemporary elements contrasting with the building are a relief and bring interest.
Okay, thank you. It sounds like everyone's pretty pleased with where we are. So it sounds like we could make a motion for project design approval at this time.
Can make that a motion.
Okay, hold on, we've
So,
got,
Mr. Chair, a couple of things. There are two conditions that, from the PC Reso that I'd like you to go over, kind of minor.
Okay.
And then the project compatibility findings. So the two are, you can pull them up, the basic ones that you always see on the screen backflow device. So if they're showing that, and that it's screened properly. So that's required at PDA. And then you talked about the dry utilities, if they're going to be on site or in the public right-of-way, if we know that yet, and if they are in the right-of-way, to be Malaga green and screened if possible.
okay. Mr. Hornbuckle, you look like you're teed up to show us.
Yeah, we have the backflow devices in this location that will be screened with landscaping.
Okay, and then any dry utilities?
I'm sorry, and just to mention, there is an existing site wall on the north side, which will screen them as well. And yes, any utilities in the right-of-way would be painted Malaga green.
Okay.
That big box at the corner.
Mr. Olson, you were in the midst of making a motion.
I make a motion to approve this for project design approval with the following comments. And I'm assuming that Kathleen's 2 points were resolved by what was just said here? So they don't have to be included in our comments?
That's correct, yes.
Right. I think one comment that I have is that the paving pattern be further designed and perhaps discussed later, and that the corner lantern, that element be studied. Extraordinary. And perhaps made extraordinary in that study. And those are the only two I have. Mr. Six, did you have a couple?
Sure.
Notice
Are
I
you
said a
seconding
couple.
that motion?
I will happily second that.
I said a
motion by
couple.
Mr.
And the project compatibility findings to add as well, please.
Didn't we already do that?
We provisionally did.
What about consensus on the paving in the parking lot?
So,
Do we have a?
Well, let's let Mr. Six make his
well,
comments.
we disagree with the prominence of the solar panels, so I can't mention that and get supported. I would like to see a study of a more decorative pattern at the Coda entry garage driveway. And that careful study be done of the green roof perimeters. I'll just say that, we all know what we're talking about.
Did we have a second?
That was Vice Chair Six. Was your
Okay,
second.
so Mr. Six's comments are approved by me, the maker of the motion.
And then
And
you need to read.
The project is consistent with design guidelines. The project is compatible with the architectural character of the city and the neighborhood. Its size, mass, bulk, height, and scale are appropriate. And it's sensitive to adjacent landmarks and references to historic references or resources. Public views of the oceans and mountains are appropriate, and the use of open space and landscaping is also appropriate.
Okay, any further discussion?
Do we want to talk about the paving or no?
I thought we did.
The pattern.
Vice Chair Six included a comment that they should study the paving pattern to be something more
No,
decorative.
I just said the decorative of the driveway, I did not. I did not address the character. I think.
Mr. Olson
We
did.
understand, yeah. I mean,
Well,
he said to
hold on,
study.
hold on. Let's read the motion back, and then we'll know.
Project design approval with the following comments. The paving pattern be further designed and perhaps discussed at a later date. The corner lantern element shall be studied and possibly made extraordinary. Study of a more decorative pattern at the Coda entry driveway, and a careful study of the green roof perimeters and the compatibility analysis findings.
Okay, let's change possibly extraordinary to extraordinary.
Extraordinary.
Thank you. Does that satisfy your concern?
It didn't really establish a direction for me, but, I mean, I think they've presented sort of two alternatives, and are we wanting to lean towards one or the other? I heard that from you and from me, but maybe not the rest of the board.
Would the
Maybe
maker
it's
of,
not-
would the
not-
maker of the motion like to include any comments specific to a direction on the potential paving pattern?
I would leave that up to the architect and his team.
Okay.
We understand. Oh, I think we got the gist of the direction.
Okay.
Chair Moore, there was considerable discussion about the signage. I'm wondering, is there any need to include some mention of further study of the signage to meet the intent of the project?
Mr. Olson?
I think only if it helped the applicant when he had to deal with Public Works and whomever else might require those. So if we can say something that is helpful in that way, I'm willing to do that.
Okay. Go ahead.
I think you said it best, to further study the signage in regards to Public Works guidelines.
I'll second and support that amendment.
It's good with me.
Okay, great. So if that's everything, let's take our vote.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I'll take the roll call vote. Chair Moore?
Yes.
Vice Chair Six?
Yes.
Board Member Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member Black?
Yes.
Board Member Olson?
Yes.
Board Member Whalen?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So
And do we, hold on.
Sorry.
We have to announce the appeal process. So if anyone wishes to appeal this decision, you may follow the instructions on the screen in front of you. Okay.
I was going to ask if we could get a continuance to the meeting in a month. We have it already? Okay, never mind.
Okay. Thank you very much. And with that, we can adjourn for the evening.